Hello dear friends, welcome to my channel Literary Sparks. Here I am back with another mock on history of English literature important MCQs. This video is part of a series of mock tests on wbpsc assistant master-mistress exam subject English. So if you have not watched the first mock test on history of English literature, you can just click on the link provided in the description of this video and you can watch that test. So let's start with another test. Here I have designed 30 MCQs from history of English literature, which will help you to presume what kinds of questions you are going to face in the exam. So let's start. First question. Jacques, Tuston, Celia are characters from Shakespeare's. So Jacques, Tuston, and Celia, these are the characters from Shakespeare's play As You Like It, Othello, Hamlet, The Tempest. These characters have been taken from As You Like It, which has been prescribed in your syllabus. Next question. What is Sir Philip Sidney's The Arcadia? So this is a work, The Arcadia, written by Sir Philip Sidney, the Renaissance man. So what is the genre of this work? Prose romance, a tragic comedy, a play, none of the above. Its answer is prose romance. So Arcadia is a Greek name. Actually, it was a place in Greece, a very scenic, beautiful landscape, pastoral. From there, Arcadia has become a prototype, a sample, an example, an ideal example of perfect land, pastoral land. And remembers that Arcadia, it had two versions. That's why which are sometimes called the old Arcadia and the new Arcadia. And this prose romance was particularly written by Sir Philip Sidney at the request of his sister. Next question, we have Dryden's tragedy The World Well Lost is better known as All for Love, Spanish Prayer, Troilus and Cressida, The Rehearsal. So Dryden's tragedy All for Love is the answer. All for Love, its subtitle is The World Well Lost. And remember, the important point from exam point of view is that this work is a heroic tragedy and this is inspired by Shakespeare's play Antony and Cleopatra. So it is a kind of reworking of Shakespearean classic. Next question, we have Adonis is being dedicated to Keats, Byron, Shelley, Wordsworth. So Adonis is a tragedy, a pastoral tragedy written by P.B. Shelley, famous romantic poet. And in that poem, he commemorated the death of Keats. So this poem, this elegy is dedicated to John Keats, and Adonis, this character has been taken from the classical myth of Adonis and Venus. Next question, we have who wrote The Adventure of Philip? W.M. Thackeray, George Eliot, Charles Dickens, Charlotte Bronte. The Adventure of Philip, it is a novel written by William Makepeace Thackeray. And remember that Thackeray, he was born in Calcutta. These type of questions also are sometimes asked in the exam. For example, Rudyard Kipling, he was born in Bombay. So remember why? Because these days those British writers or foreign writers who had some kind of connection with Indian land, they are often asked. Like Rudyard Kipling, he was born in Bombay. He wrote The Jungle Book set in Indian land. Kim, another novel set in Indian setting. And E.M. Forster's, he also worked in India for some time. And other than that, George Orwell, he was born in Motihari, which is now in Bihar. So you need to remember these kinds of questions are often asked in exam. Next question, Big Brother is a character in which of Orwell's novels? So I was talking about George Orwell and the next question is from him. So there is this famous character Big Brother and the tagline is Big Brother is watching you. Some kind of you are under continuous surveillance. Like these days we have CCTV cameras, so this concept was developed by George Orwell in one of his famous novels, 1984, Inside the Whale, Burmese Days, The Road to Vegan Fire. Its answer will be 1984, which was published in 1949 actually, and this 1984 is considered a prime example of dystopian novel. So what is dystopian fiction? It's the opposite of utopia. So utopia is a perfect land where everything is in order and there is no oppression, no exploitation, no kind of suppression. But in dystopia the picture is just the opposite, frustrating. Next question we have: who wrote The Life and Death of Mr. Badman? John Bunyan, Daniel Defoe, Samuel Richardson, Thomas Hardy. The Life and Death of Mr. Badman, it was written by John Bunyan, the famous poet in the Restoration period after John Dryden. And remember that The Life and Death of Mr. Badman, it is sometimes considered a companion piece of The Pilgrim's Progress. The Pilgrim's Progress is the most famous work of John Bunyan. So I mentioned already in my last video that sometimes uh, in exams you get questions from minor works of famous writers. So Pilgrim's Progress is obviously quite famous, we all know about, but you need to just remember the titles of minor works of major authors also. This is an example. Next question we have: Leopold Bloom and Molly Bloom are characters in which of them James Joyce's novels? Ulysses, a portrait of the artist as a young man, egoist, Stephen Hero. Ulysses is the famous modernist work by James Joyce published in 1922, and in that novel we find these characters Leopold Bloom and his wife Molly Bloom. So many times characters from famous works, novels, plays are asked in exam. I'll make a video on that also, on the famous characters in history of English literature. Next question we have: The Charge of Light Brigade is a masterpiece by Alfred Tennyson, D.G. Rossetti, Robert Browning, P.B. Shelley. This poem was written by Alfred Tennyson. Next, where do you find the character named Bosola amongst the plays of Webster? John Webster, the famous playwright of late Elizabethan and Jacobean period. So, in which of plays by Webster we find the character Bosola? The Duchess of Malfi, The White Devil, Northward Ho, A Late Murder. So it's the play The Duchess of Malfi, which is known as a revenge tragedy, tragedy of blood and murder, in which we find the character Bosola. Bosola is actually a spy who is employed by the Duchess's brother to keep an eye on her. Next question we have: the allegorical pastoral Colin Cloud Comes Home Again was written by Edmund Spenser, Geoffrey Chaucer, John Donne, William Shakespeare. This poem has been written by, this is a pastoral poem. This has been written by Edmund Spenser. Actually, this name Colin Cloud refers to Spenser himself. So, Spenser's in his personal life, in his political life, he was in Ireland as a kind of political spy employed by Queen Elizabeth. And there, staying in Ireland, he would send messages back to England. So when he returns from Ireland to his homeland, that is England, he wrote this poem to celebrate that Colin Cloud comes home again. So it's a kind of homecoming. Next question we have: by whom the famous poem The Hind and the Panther was written? John Dryden, Alexander Pope, S.T. Coleridge, P.B. Shelley. The Hind and the Panther was a famous poem written during the Restoration period by John Dryden. And remember that The Hind and the Panther, this poem is actually talking about the conflict between Roman Catholicism and Anglican Church. Anglicanism and Catholicism, these two sects of Christianity. Next question we have: Kubla Khan by Coleridge is also known as A Vision in a Dream, Lovers, A Vision, The Kraken. So if you read the poem Kubla Khan, its full title is Kubla Khan, A Vision in a Dream, A Fragment. So A Vision in a Dream, it's the subtitle of Kubla Khan. So this way you get questions when subtitles are also asked, like The World Well Lost by John Dryden, All for Love So I'll make a video on that also. So to make sure that you don't miss any of these videos, subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. Next question we have Saki is the pen name of Somerset Maugham, K.A. Abbas, Wilkie Collins, Hector Hugh Munro. Hector Hugo Munro. Saki. Saki is the pen name of Hector Hugo Munro. Next question 15. Which of the following is not authored by William Shakespeare? See, you need to pay attention to such kind of question. Here, not is in bold. Sometimes not is underlined, but sometimes not is just in normal font. So students often make this mistake when they become too much excited. Actually, this happens with everyone. There is nothing wrong in that. Why? Because sitting in the exam hall, people can't have like relaxed mind. Still, you have to be relaxed as far as possible. That's why you will score much more. So, not authored by William Shakespeare. Hamlet, we know the famous tragedy, the Taming of the Shrew, the comedy Edward the Second, Titus Andronicus. Titus Andronicus again is revenge tragedy, like Hamlet is. Edward the Second is the answer. Shakespeare has written historical plays on other kings, but Edward the Second, this particular play on this king was written by Christopher Marlowe, not by William Shakespeare. Next question we have, who was credited with the coinage of the phrase the lost generation? Gertrude Stein, Ernest Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald, T.S. Eliot. So, who has coined the term the lost generation? It is Gertrude Stein, famous American writer, who has coined this term the lost generation, and she was referring to many writers and intellectuals just after First World War who were in France, in Paris. And remember that though Gertrude Stein, she has coined the term the lost generation, but it was popularized by Ernest Hemingway in his novel The Sun Also Rises. This become particularly important. Why? Because sometimes you need to pay attention to the questions. You need to be very clever, because the people who set the questions, they are clever. You need to be cleverer to score much in the exam and to get yourself selected. Like metaphysical school of poetry, I have made a separate video on that metaphysical poetry. If you have not watched that, you just go to my YouTube channel, you will find that. So this word metaphysical was coined by William Drummond, but metaphysical school of poetry, this term, and the metaphysical school of poetry, these poets were popularized by Dr. Johnson. So you need to be careful who coined the term and who popularized it. Next question, which contemporary British poet has translated Beowulf? Tom Gunn, Ted Hughes, Edward Thomas, Seamus Heaney. It's Seamus Heaney who has translated the Old English poem Beowulf. He translated Beowulf from English to English. That is, Beowulf is written in Anglo-Saxon language dialect, Old English, and he translated. Seamus Heaney, the famous postmodern poet who also got the Nobel Prize in Literature, he translated Beowulf into modern English. Next question we have, who completed Christopher Marlowe's unfinished poem Hero and Leander after he died? Thomas Nash, Thomas More, George Chapman, William Shakespeare. So Christopher Marlowe, he has written this long narrative poem entitled Hero and Leander. So it was left unfinished due to Christopher Marlowe's sudden death, and it was finished later by George Chapman. So the answer is George Chapman. Next question we have, who is the author of the following lines? I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. Hart Crane, T.S. Eliot, Ernest Hemingway, William Carlos Williams. So the writer of this line is the famous poet, playwright, critic of modernist T.S. Eliot, and this line is a very famous line, has been taken from his poem The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. That is a interesting poem, modernist poem talking about urban life. Next question, identify the novel in which the character of Charlotte Lucas figures. Great Expectations, The Power and the Glory, Lord of the Flies, Pride and Prejudice. So, if you have already read about Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, you know that Charlotte Lucas, this character, has been taken from that novel, and she is very, very practical regarding marriage, and she is the best friend of the novel's protagonist. Next question 21. The term malapropism has been inspired by the character Mrs. Malaprop, who appears in the work. So, this term malapropism has entered into the English language and linguistics, referring to a particular way of speaking, confusing between words which are identical in pronunciation. And this was constantly used by a character, Mrs. Malaprop, in a play. So that's why she has become a very famous character. So, from which play this character has been taken? The Double Dealer by William Congreve, The School for Scandal by Richard Brinsley Sheridan, Love for Love by William Congreve, The Rivals by Richard Brinsley Sheridan. Its answer is The Rivals by Sheridan. Next question we have, R.K. Narayan's fictional place in his writings is known as Basavanaguri, Malguri, Malevaram, Maleswaram, Lalguri. So it's Malguri, R.K. Narayan's famous work, The Guide, which is prescribed in your syllabus, is based in this town. This is a fictional town which is representative of India in larger scenario and of South Indian culture in particular. So the guide, I have made two separate videos on that, explaining the plot, all the incidents, important characters, important points. From exam point of view, you have not watched that, you can watch by go to the YouTube channel. Next question we have, touchstone method of criticism was propounded by. See, this is a question for criticism, but again, since this is part of history of English literature, so they can ask anything. Actually, they have asked about criticism, about negative capability and other terms. So, touchstone method of criticism was propounded by Lionel Trilling, Matthew Arnold, Edward Said, Terry Eagleton. It was propounded by Matthew Arnold, the famous Victorian critic, writer of Dover Beach, writer of Culture and Anarchy. So, touchstone, what is a touchstone? So, if you remember this character touchstone, the very first question in this series was that touchstone is a character from William Shakespeare's As You Like It. So, touchstone is a stone which is used to examine the purity of gold. So from there, Matthew Arnold propounded the theory that we have classic writers like Milton, Shakespeare, Dante, Homer. So from there, he took some sample lines, some famous lines which he considered at touchstone, and with that he would compare with other poets writings, and this way this was the touchstone method of criticism, that how to evaluate the poets who have come later or other writings by other poets with the great lines of great masters. So those particular lines here become the touchstone. Next question we have, which title has been taken from William Shakespeare's The Tempest? The Tempest, William Shakespeare last play published in 1611. So from there, a particular writing has taken its title. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, The Way of All Place by Samuel Butler, The World Wives' Tale by Arnold Bennett. It is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. So not only Aldous Huxley, but there were many writers who came after Shakespeare. They took lines from Shakespeare's plays, from his sonnets. So there have been many reworkings, many sequels to Shakespeare plays, and a kind of reaction to the original writings. Titles have been taken from Shakespeare's works also. These are also sometimes asked in exam. So I'll make a separate video on that also. Next question, in which poem do the lines appear, our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting? Michael, Tinton Abbey, Immortality or Dejection and Ode. So this is a famous philosophical line that our birth is actually a sleep and forgetting. This has been taken from William Wordsworth's famous poem Immortality Ode. I remember that the full title of Immortality Ode on intimations of immortality from recollections of early childhood. This may be also asked in the exam. So you need to be careful. See, these questions I have selected and I am talking about this will give you some idea how to deal with this particular section, history of English literature. So whenever you get a particular line or character or a writing, you read about it. You read about it more and note down the points. This will help you definitely in exam. Next question we have, which writer was an American but later became a British subject? W. H. Auden, T. S. Eliot, Henry James, Robert Frost. See, T.S. Eliot, when we talk about him, many of us actually consider him as English writer, British writer. But T.S. Eliot, he was born in America, he was brought up in America, he was educated in America, but at certain point of time he became a British subject. This is important. And on the opposite side, on the reverse picture, we see that W.H. Auden, who was born in England, was born in Britain, brought up there, but later he traveled to America and he became an American citizen. So two-way communication we can see here. Next question, Samuel Pepys kept his diary from. So if you remember, there were two writers, Samuel Pepys and another writer in Restoration period, who are famous as diary writers. So actually, they wrote diaries for their personal reasons, but later on, those documents become historical documents, records of facts about. So Samuel Pepys' diaries is most popular. So what is the time period that he records in that diary? 1660 to 69, 1662 to 89, 1649 to 60, 1660 to 1689. So it is 1660 to 1669, beginning with restoration period, and this diary is particularly important for recording the events that took place in England, like the Great Fire of London, the Great Plague. From that point of view, historical point of view, Samuel Pepys' diary is very, very important. Next question, we have a fictional character named Judith Shakespeare is created by Judith Butler, Kate Miller, Virginia Woolf, E.M. Foster. So Virginia Woolf is the answer. Virginia Woolf, she has written this famous work, A Room of One's Own, which is often considered a kind of classic text of feminist studies. If you read about feminism, you will definitely read about this text. And in that book, it is a non-fictional book, selection of collection of essays, and in that book we have a particular essay named Shakespeare Sisters, and there she imagine, Virginia Woolf imagines that Shakespeare had a sister, Judith Shakespeare, who was equally talented like Shakespeare, but she was not allowed to pursue her career like his brother, because that world, that particular era was very, very dominated by patriarchy. So it's a feminist text written by Virginia Woolf. Next question we have, who created the character of Mowgli in the famous book The Jungle Book? E.M. Foster, G.B. Shaw, Rudyard Kipling, Joseph Conrad. So I have already talked about this work, that The Jungle Book is written by Rudyard Kipling, and in that book, we find this character Mowgli. The Jungle Book, it's an awesome book. You should read it. It is written in very simple English language, and moreover, it is set in Indian context, and there are many Indian words also taking from Indian languages like Bandar Log. Instead of monkeys group, Rudyard Kipling used this term, the Bandar Log. So log is the Indian word for people. Next question we have, in which year was G.B. Shaw awarded with Nobel Prize? This also becomes important, friends. Like in exam, you may have questions for Nobel Prize writer or Pulitzer Prize writer. So GB, so he was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1925. You can remember this. This is very easy. 1925. This is the same year also when the Communist Party of India was established. So friends, this was the second mock test on history of English literature, and many more mock tests will come in this channel on various topics of your syllabus. So to make sure that you don't miss any of these mock tests, subscribe to the channel. Moreover, we are going to start mock test series that is paid at very nominal price. So in that mock test series, of course, on English subject you will get topic wise mock test. We'll have topic wise mock test, and questions will be provided in PDFs. Then after a while, when you attempted all the questions, answers will be given, and then the results will be published. And moreover, there will be a special focus on history of English literature. And uh, when there is some need, we'll have online meetings on Google Meet and discussion. We'll discuss about how to prepare with various topics, how to deal with the diverse areas. Because in PSC assistant teacher exam, you have so many topics actually. There are literary text, there is history of literature, there is rhetoric, there are questions from language and linguistics also, and from grammar, vocabulary. So many things are there. So I have made videos on the PYQs daily with, and moreover that I have a separate video on comparing these 2 years. That from which section you had how many questions in a particular year. So if you are interested in joining this mock test, you can just contact on the number, WhatsApp me. With that, thank you. Have a nice day. Thank you for watching.